practicing as a pediatric hematologist in India for over 11 years, and the whole process of stem cell transplantation has come up in leaps and bounds over the last decade in our country. It's quite easy for a family when we diagnose a patient with either leukemia or thalassemia or immune deficiency. It's quite easy for a family to say that their fully matched brother or sister will donate stem cells for the patient. 70% of our patients that don't have a matched donor within the family, we have to find an appropriate stem cell donor outside of the family. Now, with increasing awareness and with facilities and technology to do unrelated stem cell transplantation, we are able to find donors within our country. In some of our donors, it's really easy to convince them because they truly have volunteered for the donation and they want to help save life. Whereas in others, there are very varied family issues. It may be the case that they have to seek permission from their immediate family members, it may be their parents. Once we've told the news to a family that voluntary stem cell donors available within the country, it really brings cheer and hope to the family that their patient is going to get cured, and this would give them a better chance compared to volunteers from outside of the country. Initially, we would do about 20 searches and find only matches for 1 or 2 children. But now with registries like Dhatri in India, we are finding good matches for at least 4 or 5 children, and we are able to offer curative transplantation to these patients, and we've done about 9 children transplant, and it has worked beautifully and it has made a change to their life for disorders like intractable leukemia or immune deficiency or thalassemia, and there is hope for the future in our country.
Now, when we search, we have a patient, for example, now who needs a transplant. We sent a search. We found a match from NMDP, which is the US registry. Our cost of transplant is 10 lakh. Their cost of stem cell is 20 lakhs. So we are not able to proceed. It's too expensive to proceed even when there is a full 10 by 10 match from the registry outside of India. So we need Indian registry because that's the only way to make it cost effective, and when we can offer this practically to more people.
Overall, donating stem cells, peripheral blood stem cells, which we are here talking about, is very simple. It's very comfortable procedure for the donor, though it takes little time, 4 hours time, but it's very safe procedure. See, stem cells, as Raghu has said, either it could be collected from the marrow, so that's a bit a crude method and painful method, but here about the stem cell that is collected from the peripheral blood. You get the single prick in the vein, peripheral vein, maybe in cubital vein in the elbow region. The same thing is done here, but the only thing is here, because the blood is processed and we harvest the stem cells from that, so it's done in the intermittent cycles, so it takes little time. So as Jinal had said, the procedure takes around 4 to 5 hours depending on the weight and the flow of the blood we get from the donor. Otherwise, it's very simple procedure. Donor remains fully conscious. She can watch the TV, she can read, she can listen the music, whatever. She is free. She just have to lie down, and me and the machine, we do the work. So donor is totally comfortable throughout the procedure. There are no any side effects as such for the procedure, except few and because here the blood is mixed with the anticoagulant, so sometimes donor might get tingling or numbness, but that we also take care with the calcium tablets or the calcium drip, so that is not an issue, major issue also. And so far I have done almost now 250 such procedures now, and none of the time we have never come across any major or even except this tingling on numbness, citrate toxicity, we have never come across any major problem during the procedure.
There are more than 30 indications where a bone marrow or a stem cell transplant is going to be curative. If transplant is not done, none of these patients would be alive. Worldwide, about 50,000 transplants takes place every year. In India alone, putting all the centers together, maybe around 500 transplants takes place annually. Out of the 30 indications, half of them are for malignant disorders and the other half are for benign disorders. Even though they're called benign, they behave as bad or worse than a malignant cancer. The unfortunate part is these patients who require a transplant for a curative procedure, only 30% would find a related match, meaning either the brother or sister would match. And maybe about 7% of the time, the parents would match, which means 70 or 65% of these patients do not find a match. I'm really amazed, and hats off to Raghu for all the energy and the efforts that he has taken. He had the vision and the energy to do it, and he just did it.
It's really difficult to sit in front of a patient with some kind of illness which may be either cancerous or non-cancerous, and kind of tell them that we know what treatment to do, but for want of say donor cells, we can't do it to you. And we have existing patients sitting like that. There is in fact one patient who's now in the ward, admitted with multiple rounds of chemotherapy with leukemia, only buying time to try and find a donor. And the search has been going on for almost about 1.5 years, no available donor anywhere. And we are now pushed to the wall to even consider things like haplotransplants, where we do transplants from half-matched parents. But then if you have parents who are 65, 70, even that gets extremely tough to offer as a treatment. And then, this particular patient also kind of has a donor who's in the medical community who we are not able to convince. This is the other part of it. So one is to get till there, and then you're almost there, and then you get stuck like this. And then we look back at our own community and then say that, in spite of whatever we are trying to, give knowledge, talk about this, we are doing, there are people like, like Medha who've just walked in and just said, just collect, and then, without any questions on the medical part of it. And then we've got people who have gone through the entire, medical knowledge and who have access to people, to transplant centers and things like that for any small, issue. And then we get stuck like this. So when we are faced with such patients, it gets really, really difficult, because you can't go and tell somebody, we don't have treatment or we are end of the road, whoever that person is. Because they turn back and tell you, I want to live, you have to do something to save me. So that's our predicament when we are stuck with these kind of things. Initially, no match sibling donor available, end of story. Now we have progressed a long way from there, and at least now we can say that there is something like this. The costs are much less than getting a donor from the US at 25 lakhs. So all this is now more doable, it's more affordable. It's just that we need the numbers, and we get stuck on that. So we've been trying our best, even at various transplant meetings and our groups when they get together, to try and encourage this process, dissipate more information, try and encourage people for donor drives, just spread the message, and also encourage people to say that this process is not that difficult to do. If you look at it from from our perspective, when we say that we are going to collect stem cells from a donor, a healthy, normal donor. So for us, a donor is more important than the patient at that point in time, because that's a normal person donating cells. We can't take even a 0.5% risk to the donor. So we are kind of paranoid that we make sure that there's no trouble to the donor. That donor fears are something which is there. And we've seen it even in the sibling situation, where I've had, in front of me, I've had a sister of a patient tell me that, I cannot give cells to her, knowing that she is the only matched donor. It's just that my husband and my in-laws have not given me permission, end of story. And we've had this. And I've even gone to the extent of trying to find an unrelated donor for that patient, knowing that there's a matched sibling donor available sitting in front of me, and it's just that they don't listen to you. You know? So we can have extremes like this. And we are going to the other extreme where somebody doesn't even know who it is and then they willingly donate. So I suppose, you know, we see both perspectives and we try to encourage whoever we can and try and, you know, run this in.
Leukemia is not the only disease that will be cured by a transplant. I'm sure some of you have seen the video that was projected here. Somebody with an immune deficiency problem. I'm not talking about HIV/AIDS. I'm talking about certain immune deficiencies that children are born with. There are diseases where the bone marrow does not produce cells adequately. It's called aplastic anemia. There are conditions like thalassemia where your hemoglobin is not normal. So there are many, many non-cancer related conditions also where you will have to do a transplantation for curative treatment. So as I said, the problem is increasing. The number of patients who need a transplant is increasing. On the other hand, the number of donors is progressively going down because of complex diversity in the genes and single children families. So where do you go and get a donor? It's really very difficult, and that's where people like Dhatri really come in. Now, when 10 years ago somebody proposed to have a registry like this in India, I certainly did not believe that it would happen at all. Because this is something that people in the West have realized many years ago, and the donor registries in the West were set up many years ago, while in India, although we have a big need, we did not do anything about it. So when somebody spoke to us about it, we really scoffed at them and said, look, this doesn't happen in this country, it's not possible. And then slowly, 3-4 years ago, when Janaki walked into my room one afternoon quietly and sat and said, look, this is who I am and this is what we propose to do, even then I never thought that something like this would happen. Okay? But today, what we are seeing is going to be, or rather what we will see is going to be a real magical moment. I have not witnessed a moment like this. I've been a cancer physician for almost 15 years. Dr. Prasad, who's sitting here, has been in this field for 20 years. I don't think either of us have seen something like this happening. Okay? So it is important that we contribute constructively to what Dhatri is doing today. And the best thing that any one of us can do is to pledge our marrow to them.